Good afternoon, everyone. This is Truman Rowe with TruTechnical Partners. I have the privilege of introducing Dave Stelzl, author, security expertise, the author of Digital Money, and we're going to talk a little bit today about cybersecurity and how to protect your assets and how the troublesome hackers are ruining your life. So, Dave, you've written quite a few books. All about cybersecurity. You're a CISO. You're an expert in the field. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got started and why that is?
You know, a lot of people think it's because I'm really super interested in security, but originally I was just working with networks. You know, I was a network guy back in the, back in the late 80s. That kind of dates me, huh? But it was actually a college student who came along, and we were building a business to help companies put in their networks and servers and stuff like that. And this college guy came up to me and said, you know, we really ought to get into the security business because that is what people are really going to need. And when he said that, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, well,
Yeah.
this is the internet hadn't really, I mean, the internet existed, but it didn't exist in business. It wasn't a commercial tool. And it was just coming on. And he said, I think the internet is going to be huge. If you can imagine, if anybody can remember back to, you know, before 1995, 93, 94 timeframe, we weren't on the internet for business, and people are questioning, will this ever actually be a business tool? And he was saying, it's going to be a business tool. And this guy's right out of college. And he said, you know, security is going to be hot, and people are going to be able to get into stuff, and they're going to start hacking into people, and it's going to be a mess. And so
Right.
we dove into security, and sure enough, it's been a fast ride since 95.
It has, and just out of all of the information that keeps flying by you, everybody is looking at that saying, when are we going to stop having all of these problems of hackers and so forth? And I remember when they used to be able to have it to where hackers would used to come in and they like to just bring your system down and say, hey, I can turn off your computers. But now it's all about money. Everything's about money now, right?
Exactly. Well, even ransomware, which does shut stuff down, is about money. But you're right. It used to be, it's cool that I can get in, I can shut something down, or I can make fun of you or put some pornographic on your website and you know, hurt your brand or something like that. But it was like vandalism, right? It was like, you know, kids in a city, you know, painting somebody's car with a spray can or keying somebody's car. And yeah, you're right. I mean, somebody figured out there's money here, you know, and as soon as
Right.
that happened, this turned into big business, and you better believe it is big business. There are big organizations out there that are just run like a company like yours, or like one of your clients, or even bigger companies with people sitting at desks in cubes, you know, on phones, on computers, working every day, just like you and I are, to produce a product. And the thing they're producing is software to hack into stuff, ransomware attacks. They've got customer service people on the phone, you know, talking to people who have ransomware. I mean, if you can imagine getting a customer service call or getting a message on your screen that says, hey, if you have any questions or you need help, call this number. You know, we'll walk you through how to pay us in Bitcoin and how to get your key and how to get unlocked. And we've got a whole customer service center set up to help you get back into business, and we're here for you, you know? I mean, that's the kind of messaging that these guys are using, almost as if, you know, you wanted them to hack into you. It's crazy. It's absolutely
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah, and I think that it's becoming more and more prevalent in the small, medium business environment because they don't have, small companies don't have the budgets and everything to be able to have the security experts on staff the way that some of these larger companies. But you know what? Even with the larger companies having the IT staffs, look at look at all of the big data breaches that have been coming across on the big companies. And that's all public news. Tell me more about that. Tell me how that comes about, a Target and all of these others in the past.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing on a global scale. I know that there are hundreds of thousands of jobs predictably not filled in the coming year. And because there's a shortage of people that really understand security. And, you know, it's like anything that requires a lot of expertise and a lot of experience. It's a fairly new field. I mean, fairly new. And of course, the hacks are always changing, so that makes it even harder to really be up to date. So the idea of finding somebody to work in your company who really understands security, and then being able to afford that person and being able to keep them interested in your company. Those are all difficult things. So as an example, when I think about a Fortune 500 financial firm, those companies have a lot of activity going on, you know, thousands and thousands of threats every day. They're running red teams and blue teams who are like hacking and recovering, hacking and recovering. So those guys have a constant battle going on that keeps them interested, keeps them trained, keeps them sharp. And you can hire security people in that kind of company. But you go into a little bit of a smaller company, go into a mid-market company, or especially into a smaller business that has an IT organization. A, you can't really afford in that size company to hire dedicated security people that really know what they're talking about. But B, there's also not necessarily enough daily activity to keep that person sharp and really interested in security. So they're going to end up leaving and going to work for a technology company or going to work for one of those Fortune 500s. So what's left? The mid-market companies and all the way down into the small business, and certainly anybody who doesn't even have an IT organization is not going to have people that know security. And you can't divide it, by the way. That's the other question I get is, can this IT person be a security guy and an IT guy? They're really different. They're very different disciplines, and there's not enough brain power in any one given individual to be able to be all those things. It doesn't exist. It's like the general practitioner doctor going to your family doctor and saying, "Hey, I need eye surgery. You know, can you do that?" And of course, he can look at the general thing and go, "Yeah, it looks like you got an eye problem, but I'm going to refer you to a specialist." And that's what a security person is. They're a specialist. They're expensive. They're hard to come by, and you're going to need an appointment to go see one.
Right. So tell me, so small, medium businesses, in our experience out there, a lot of the business owners or the presidents and so on and so forth, they always say, hackers don't want me. I'm a small little business. Well, then why would they hack me? Yeah, exactly. Tell us why you think that they would go after a small, medium business.
I do also hear that frequently. And, I tell people it's, a long time ago, if I was going to hack in and do something that was destructive and I wanted to make a name for myself as somebody cool who can break into stuff, I'd want to put my name on some big bank website, right? Because that would be cool. And I'd be able to point to my friends and say, "Hey, I broke into this big law firm." But when I'm out to make money, I don't really want exposure. What I want is the money. And so I'm going to go anywhere where I can get the credentials I need to get money. So when I look at small business and mid-sized business, these are companies that are easy to break into. Very few of them. By the way, I've done a lot of speaking this year at conferences that have IT directors or C-level leadership, like CIOs, CISOs in the audience. And I'm asking, how many of you have had a risk assessment performed in the last 12 months? And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, I'm sure you see this too, but even in fairly large companies, it's like 5%, 3%. In the small business market, it might be 1 out of 100 has actually been doing this. So if I'm a hacker breaking into those size companies, first of all, I'm probably not going to get caught because nobody's looking. And as long as I don't make a mistake, I can get in. And the thing is, all I really need are credentials that allow me to get money. I don't have to steal money from you. If I can get some of your banking credentials, or if I can get enough information about your company to go take out loans against your company as though I were you. And here's the thing people don't understand. If I have your data, really you and I are, in real life, I can tell who you are, but online, you could be anybody. And so if I have your digital credentials, I can be you. That means I can take out loans like you can in your name. I can buy stuff in your name. I can buy cars. I can buy houses. I can buy land. I can buy stock. I could buy anything, and I can certainly go out and buy stuff that I could then resell on the black market, expensive medical equipment or whatever, and I can run up debt against your name, and then you've got to somehow prove to somebody that you didn't actually buy it, but yet I had all your credentials. So who's to say it wasn't you, right? How are you going to prove your innocence?
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that a hacker what are some of the ways that they'll come in and get your data? So is it through, there's phishing attacks, there's there's all sorts of email, there's ransomware, there's several ways of how to do this. But, to be able to get your password, out in the, out in the dark web, they talk about, how they steal somebody's password, and so many times that the same person uses the password for their email as the same thing for all of their banking. Do you find that to be true also, that they don't?
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably the two prominent things I see out there happening. I'd say the most likely thing that happens out there is the hacker is still using you mentioned phishing attacks earlier, some form of malware that I'm going to plant on your computer. So that's either going to come in through some kind of spam email. And I know people are upset about spam email because they're tired of getting it, but that is not the risk. I mean, you can filter spam email out and you can delete it pretty quickly. It's not that big a deal. The big deal is me planting some kind of spyware on your computer that allows me to capture your passwords and your credentials and all that sort of thing. And that's going to happen through a lot of ways. It's going to happen through an email. It's going to happen when you visit a malicious website. It's pretty common today for people to set up a website that looks like your banking website. It's just a little bit off, one character off. And who's to say, I mean, a lot of times you get redirected to a secure website anyway when you get on some of these sites, and you don't really know what URL you're supposed to be going to. So putting up a fake website is a really big deal. Getting an email that's saying, hey, you've got a tracking number here, package is on its way, click here to find out where it is. That's a common way. And, everybody's going to click on that, right? Boom, yes. I'm going to click on that. And most of us are expecting a package because we're all Amazon Prime members. So stuff like that it's just easy to dupe somebody. So I'd say that's the number one way. But that other thing that you mentioned is also really important. And right now there's a pretty huge scam going on where people are getting the password from you. So, we all know big groups, organizations have been hacked into that have lots of passwords, like Yahoo, for instance, not too long ago. Right. So they got that password and they know that you probably have 100 different passwords that are exactly the same, because that's what everybody does, or it's one character off. And they're sending out, emails that say, hey, we know your password and we hacked into your computer 6 months ago, and we've captured data that you're not going to want us to expose on your computer, and we're going to release that if you don't pay us this ransom. And they're making a lot of money on that scam. But the truth is they don't actually have data from your computer. They just have your password from the dark web. And of course you recognize it. Oh, there's my email address. There's my password. And I use that password for 100 different things. And it's believable. So people are really scared of that particular attack. But the whole thing is a scam. It doesn't even exist. But it could, because it could. Yeah, I could.
Well, very much so. So, you know what? There was another thing within that we see within, a lot of times in some instances is where BYOD, bring your own device. Those are issues for companies. Users bringing down applications. Hey, I want to try this new cool app that's out there. They go out and they download it. It might not even be a legitimate app. It might be something that is a malicious website to go to. So on and so forth. So tell me more about that, because those are things within that I've heard you talk about in the past, that those are major concerns for people. The apps and bringing stuff into your internal network.
Yeah, that is a biggie, and that's a really hard issue. The bring your own device movement is, we're not going to get rid of it, right? Everybody's digital now, and the younger the workforce, people coming out, they live in a digital world. I mean, they don't even talk to each other, even if they're close to each other. They still text each other, right?
Right.
Their own device, and that's the way we're going to work. But it's true, there are lots of apps out there that are fraudulent apps, and it turns out it's not that difficult in some environments to get those apps put out in places where people are going to download them onto their phone. And the thing they don't really realize is, your phone, like right now, if you've got, whatever kind of smartphone you've got, you're using Siri or one of those other, I probably shouldn't even say that because my phone will start, will wake up. Our phones are listening to us. So what that means is Siri is built to listen for the command, which I'm not going to say because then my phone will wake up and listen to me, right? But the thing is, because your phone does that to listen, any app can be programmed to listen for anything. And so your phone's tracking where you are, your phone is listening to what you're saying. And so people can put apps out there now today that they know that you're talking and all, they can capture all that stuff, and they can do all kinds of crazy stuff and of course we're doing everything on our phone too. So we're logging into our bank, we're transferring money, we're buying and selling stocks. I mean, we're handling all of our financial business and all our social media business and all our email and a lot of corporate data. It's all being handled on this device that is built to listen to us, track us, and you can certainly put an app out there that captures all the screen data as well. This one device is a scary device, and I don't think people have any idea how scary it really is.
Well, okay, so that's a great point, because what's real popular and what people are talking a lot about is Internet of Things. And all of the now how it can almost run your entire house. I was leaving the house the other morning, and I said, "Okay, sweetie, I'll see you later." And Google came up and said, "Okay, have a good day." And I'm sitting there going, "How did this come about?" So talk about the Internet of Things, how that actually fits into our daily life, which can also open up a spot for a cyber criminal to come into your home to be able to access your home computers, which then can cause more havoc because now they have email addresses that you're communicating back and forth to your business, and also Internet of Things in the office. People say, "Oh, I have my coffee maker. My coffee maker is already timed up and ready to go. So everybody gets to the offices, there's fresh coffee ready for them to go." So talk about Internet of Things and where the dangers are, or where the issues can be in that field, well, than just in that in itself.
Yeah, I think it's common knowledge that Target was attacked through their HVAC connection. But it's true, the Internet of Things is probably one of the fastest growing things out there, and there are literally billions of devices being added to the Internet thing. If you look at some of the projections, compared to the world population, it is enormous, the growth of Internet of Things. So in other words, everything is being connected. And like you just said, not only is the phone listening to what you're doing, but now your home's listening to what you're doing. And nobody, a lot of these devices weren't built to be secure. I think we've gotten pretty good at understanding, even though we still do stupid things, that our laptop or our PC at our desk needs to have an antivirus type aspect to it. It needs to have passwords and all that sort of thing. But we haven't quite gotten there on our phone. Very few people protect their phone against malware. But once you get outside that, I think one of the biggest things that people are just so shocked about when I speak about it is their copy machine. Now, all the other devices are even getting worse because they're so far away from security, it's ridiculous. But even a copy machines, make recordings of everything that you copy on them. And a lot of those machines are leased. So, you get this machine, it's connected to your network, it's got an operating system, it is a computer, it's online. People can break into that device. They can access all the documents you've ever copied. And I mean, think about some of the stuff you copy, all your financial spreadsheets and everything. Oh, we're going to go over this in our quarterly board meeting or whatever. We're making copies of stuff, or we're printing stuff. There's images of that stuff in the system.
Scanning it and sending it out by email and so forth. A lot of people do that as well.
And then the lease runs out and I want an upgrade. So I send it back to the copy company, and then they give that device to somebody else, and your data's on it unless somebody cleans it out. And you and I know that even if the company says they wipe everything out, it's not necessarily true. There's a lot of stuff out there being sold today on eBay and other places that has tons of data on it. In fact, one of my kids bought a phone recently, and it had a bunch of data on it. And, he wiped it out and everything, but it's just common. So, there's just no security on any of these devices once you get outside of your PC, including the phone, but even getting out to your HVAC, your light bulbs, your refrigerator. I mean, all this stuff is built for you to communicate with it verbally. It's listening to that means, and it's got an operating system. So if I can access that computer and it's on your network, then there's a good chance that I can make my way to your computers through that, because we're now on the network.
Right. And that's, so that kind of brings me to the next part is how about the cloud, taking your company to the cloud. So everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to take all of my data and put it out in the cloud so I don't have to have servers, and I can lower my costs and all of this." But the security piece is still a true factor, no matter if you have it on-prem on your premises, or else if you're taking it out to the cloud, you still need to be secured. And so many small businesses think that that's the way for them to lower their costs and not have a chance to be compromised, or else have their data secured. What about that? Because that's a whole nother area.
Yeah, that's a complicated issue, and there's a lot of areas that we could touch on, but let's just touch on a couple of misconceptions about the cloud. First of all, I'm not anti-cloud, because I think
Right.
a lot of companies can't afford and won't take the time to really secure their stuff. But when someone does put their stuff out of the cloud, I think a lot of times they're missing asking a lot of the right questions, and the only question they're really asking is, where's the cheapest cloud? And that's the wrong question. The right question is to ask, who's actually going to be controlling my data, because the cloud provider controls that data, and are they actually going to keep my data secure, and what's going to happen to my data if somebody breaks into that cloud? Or what if that cloud goes out of business? Like if your data's in some application out there and that thing dries up, where does your data go? Does somebody actually delete that data, or what? Or how about this one? The cloud is in some other country, and what laws now govern that data? Nobody thinks about that kind of stuff.
That's very true. Yes.
But
right.
Let's even get a little more practical than that and bring it right back to the office, right? So people are saying things. I hear stuff all the time like, well, all our stuff's in the cloud, so we don't really need security anymore. I'm running antivirus. What else do I need? And all data comes to the desktop or the laptop or the phone from the cloud in order for you to work on it. It's sitting in this memory. So if there's any malware on this computer, all the credentials I use to get to the cloud, first of all, are going to be typed in on this screen. So anything that's capturing screen data on this laptop is going to be able to get to that cloud if it's on this computer. So it's not like I'm sitting in this dumb terminal mainframe world. I've got a computer sitting here. There's data being loaded into memory, and there's the opportunity for the hacker to take over my computer and be able to get to my cloud. And, so the security issues really do exist. And then there's one other thing that is happening, and it's very common, and that is for me to email stuff. Even though it's in the cloud, it doesn't mean I'm not going to send stuff around, access stuff, delete stuff, change stuff. And there's no accountability really for a lot, especially in these small businesses. Very little accountability about who accessed what, who did what, because it's not easy to track all that stuff. So you got the laptop or the desktop with no security. You got this inability to track who's doing what out there. And then you got the cloud itself. Is it really secure? Where is it? What laws govern it? So, there's a lot of stuff in the cloud that a person ought to really think about before they just say, oh, let's put everything in the cloud. And it's not one cloud usually. There's like every app has its own cloud, And so every time you start working with a different application, you need to be thinking, well, what cloud is this? And is this a good place to be? Cloud's a big deal. I mean, it really is a big deal. And a lot of people just aren't thinking about anything but cost.
Exactly. So well, then to that point, so there's very many of them. There's quite a few different types of vertical clients that we have, and they talk about going to the cloud. We do embrace the cloud in some instances, but talk about how some of these clients have to be concerned about compliancy of HIPAA, PCI, all of this going out to the cloud. All of that matters, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And so that comes back to, just recently I was talking to one person who got in trouble because they were emailing data. So that data's in the cloud, but they're working with clients, and the clients aren't accessing it there. The person in the office is accessing there, and they're exchanging stuff through email to communicate the stuff. So all those kinds of things still happen in the compliance world, where I'm putting data into places where it shouldn't be. I'm putting it into my personal email. They're taking it home to work on it. I'm sending it to other people. I'm sharing a password with several people who are working on data, so there's no accountability. And, the compliance laws, I think sometimes are a little fuzzy, and it's hard to track exactly what you're supposed to do. But the fact is, if that data gets into the hands of the wrong people and gets misused, and people find out that you're doing these kinds of things, you're going to get hit with fines, and it's going to be hard to get out of that. Plus, your clients are going to be really mad, and potential lawsuits is there. Compliance is a big deal. I always separate that from security, because securing data is different than meeting compliance. But you also have to think about, what kinds of things need to be in place here compliance-wise, and just training people to handle data properly would be a big step, but it's not enough. There has to be controls in place that force people to live under certain policies. Otherwise, they're not going to comply. So the cloud doesn't change any of that. It's still easy for people to be out of compliance.
Right. And it comes to the point that, hey, if you're hacked, you're no longer compliant. So those are major issues that, hey, you know, I was compliant yesterday, but now I just got hacked. Now I'm not. But you know then that talks about data breaches. I mean, you know, in the small medium business, even Verizon, in their 2017, I think it was 2017, their data breach report said that 61% of attacks were directed towards small businesses, and the majority of those hacks were caused from internal users opening up possibilities for hacks to come in. Can you comment on that and tell me about your opinion on that, because that has to be a major issue as well.
Yeah, the insider attack thing is one of those stats that people throw around, but it really is a big deal. And there's a couple of places where it becomes a big deal. So first of all, almost every attack has some internal component. So the 67% number refers to certain types of activities. But if you think about it, just about every breach out there involves some end user making a mistake. You know, they're clicking on a link that they shouldn't have clicked on.
Right.
There's ways to check that. I mean, you can mouse over a link and see what that link really is, and if you don't know what you're talking about. But the point is, just about every attack involves somebody internal. So you got that. You also have this idea that people who are internal who need money are frequently approached by outside hackers to cooperate with them. And for enough money, people will do that. So you got that issue out there. Then you got people doing stupid stuff internally just because they're trying to get their job done, and they're even breaking policy. So for instance, I'm in a hotel today, right? And it's a policy that if you come in the back door with your key card, that you shouldn't let the guy behind you in without them also having a key card, right? But how many of us are going to say, oh, whoop,
Yeah,
you can't come in. I'm closing the door. Get your key out, right? Who's going to do that? And the same is true when someone's sitting behind their computer and somebody needs something from them, needs access to something. Hey, can I use your password? I don't have mine. Or somebody calls in and says, hey, I'm from your IT group and I need access to this, or I need you to reset this, or I need you to click on this link. You know, I mean, how many people who are just trying to get their job done, who are not really super technical, are just going to do it, right?
Exactly.
So
the majority, yep.
So internal stuff is so much bigger than, you know, somebody doing something malicious. A lot of times it's just me doing my job. Somebody talked me into doing something, you know, I didn't know, and the guy needed help, and, you know, who knows? This happens all the time. It really does.
Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of, you know, with a lot of our customers is, we see viruses coming in, you know, and the ransomware attacks, because they are clicking on things that, yes, I thought that was coming from a legitimate source, and so that's when the ransomware comes into play. We were talking about you know, being able to detect and to protect, and how is it that we remediate or else help to alleviate the issues, so we're going to solve the problems. You've talked a lot about protection and protection, detection, and the remediation. Those are the three major components. However, you know, you can put everything out there to try to protect yourself, but if you can't detect those issues, it really doesn't matter what you have in the protection line. Well, then talk to me a little bit more about your opinions about that, and how that really does affect the small medium businesses.
Yeah, so I think that, you know, I think we've been sold on some of these. It's starting to come to light now, but for many years, manufacturers out there have been saying we can protect you, right? If you use our firewall, we can protect you. If you use a password that looks like this, it's going to keep your data safe. If you use our virtual private network, you know, VPN connection, you know, we'll keep you safe. You know, if you encrypt using this protocol, or whatever, it'll be safe. And, you know, none of that really is true. The truth is that hackers study this stuff, and there's always bugs in software. There's always holes in networks. there has to be for an exchange of web traffic and email traffic and file transfers and all that sort of stuff. So, for years, I've been trying to tell people that you cannot depend on firewalls and passwords and encryption to keep data safe. You need that stuff, right? But what that does is it keeps the neighbors out, right?
Right.
And the thing, if you think about your home, it's one of the analogies I frequently use. If I'm home, my door is not going to keep a determined, group of violent people out. They're just going to kick my door in. And it's only if I'm home or I've got an alarm that goes off that anyone's going to know that it happened, right? If
Right.
they'll be around to hear it, they're just going to knock the door down and come in. And that's what's happening in the data world, because that's stealth. Nobody can see that. Nobody can see somebody coming into your network unless they're looking for it, right? They got to be there looking for it. And if you don't have technology in place to look at it, nobody can see the data. But the thing that kills me is it's not that expensive to have somebody monitor your home versus, build walls and put barbed wire fences and all that kind of stuff around your house. And the same is true of a network. If you just have somebody monitoring your network environment, they can see a lot. They can stop a lot of those things. And of course, the key is there's got to be a response plan behind it, right? If I detect something, just like in my home, if I detect something, there better be a response plan behind that thing that happens fast. But if I can't detect it, they're going to come in, they're going to steal all my stuff, they're going to leave, I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to detect it. I'm going to look around and go, man, my house is trashed. And that's what's happening in the network space. And it's about a 200-day on average time frame. So 200 days later is the average amount of time it takes a business person to realize somebody's taken our stuff. 200 days is a long time. You can get a lot of data in 200 days.
They are getting a lot of data, and then they're also looking at how they can use your systems to go after other companies to be able to use your computer power in order to serve up, I guess, undesirable websites.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so crypto mining is a good example of that, right? I'm taking over other people's computers, and I'm going to harness that power. And of course, it's going to take your processing power down to its knees. And I'm going to use all that processing power to go out and steal, Bitcoin and other kinds of cryptocurrencies. That's a huge, huge trend right now. Absolutely.
That's a really, really, really big business out there with them right now is the crypto mining. And that's the thing. So when these people are in your systems for 200 plus days, they're using your computers when you know that you're dormant, when you're not using your system, so it doesn't slow down your internal work. So that then we start examining what that is, and to your point, that's why monitoring is so critical, because we would see that at night. Well, then we would see what type of carrying on is going on. Correct?
Yeah, and another thing just comes to mind here that people don't sometimes realize is if your computer is doing something illegal, like crypto mining is fairly new, and there hasn't been a lot of discussion in the press about what happens if your computer is involved in that kind of thing. Well, let's take something else, which is a fast-growing, prominent business online, and that is the resale of child pornography. So if I were in that business, which of course I'm not, but if I were, then whose computer would I be hosting on that? I wouldn't be hosting it on my computer. I'd be hosting it on your computer, right? And who's liable for that? Well, it turns out that you are, unless you can prove your innocence. But there's not going to be a proof of innocence until somebody's already tarnished your name. And so many instances I've heard of where the FBI shows up, and they always show up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and of course the person's at home, and they break through the door and they confiscate all the computers, and the wife and the kids are standing there going, "Whoa, is this true? Does Dad really do this?" And he's like, "No, this isn't me." But they're hauling him off to the station and taking all the computers with them. And it sure looks like he's guilty. And how do you prove your innocence? It's on your computer, and there's no way for you to prove that it's somebody else. I mean, it's a big deal.
Right. And well then to that point, then it comes back down to how is it that we can protect ourselves as well as our home computers from these types of ransomwares. I mean, then we do double authentication for emails. We also do, a data backup. When we do a cloud backup, there's a lot of different other ways within that we help to minimize the loss of data, also through virtualization and a lot of different other ways to be able to do that and using softwares. But to that point, that's where the small medium businesses need the majority of the help. Is they don't know how to prevent these people from coming in and grabbing their data, and the costs. It was in the Wall Street Journal the other day. I think that it was a data breach to a small medium business will cost you over $150,000 in penalties and fees. Do you find that to be true out there in the small, medium, or mid-sized businesses?
Yeah, so there's actually a formula that people can kind of look at to sort of think through the remediation effort. So and depending on the size of the company and the type of the data they can assume that somewhere between $1 of prevention is worth at least 100, but in some businesses 1,000, and in larger enterprise businesses up to $1 million in loss. So in other words, if I spend $1 on prevention right today in the small business market, I would be covering about $100 in loss at least. So you spend $1,000, you're saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
It's a formula that you can kind of take a look at. And really, in the small business, frequently it's not that expensive to monitor. But I did want to make one other point here, because a thing you were talking about with the people taking over computers and how do you prevent that? There is a gap in time, and I don't think a lot of people realize this. Internet time is fast, but the time it takes a hacker to actually get situated and set up on your computer does take a little bit of time. It's not like it's instantaneous.
Right.
So usually what that hacker is doing is they're sending out mass amounts of, say, spam email, not just to one person. They don't need to know who you are. They just got a list from somewhere on the dark web that has 10,000 companies on it, and you happen to be on it because you had a Yahoo account, or I don't want to call it Yahoo, it could be anybody, whoever got hacked in the last 5 years. And so now I'm sending out stuff to those 10,000 companies or 100,000 companies or more, and my malware is landing on those computers. And when it does, I start to get messages back, and I'm going to get a lot of messages back because it's going to be successful across a pretty high percentage of those networks. So now there's going to be a time frame where that malware is communicating with what is called my command control server. And it's at that moment that a security person could pick up that traffic. I mean, if I'm monitoring the network, I'm going to see that workstation communicating with that control server. And it's not a legitimate IP address. It's not something this company should be communicating with. And when I see that, I can cut it off.
Yep.
But if I'm not monitoring, I can't cut it off. And so it's kind of like, if I don't detect them coming in the house, I can't stop them from stealing. But if I was standing at the front door, or I had a camera right there at the front door, the moment they came in and I had something that happened to stop it, I could. And that's what companies don't realize.
Yeah. So to that, so there's all of these components coming in. That's why, wouldn't you recommend to most companies to at least do an assessment of their environment, to be able to come in and do a security assessment, to see where their potential holes are? I guess is probably the easiest way to willing to put it. But then what do you think about that, rather than doing an assessment?
Yeah, I call it, what you're looking for is you're looking for exposure. And one of the problems, that you've probably read this in my books and so forth, I talk a lot about assessments that don't really mean anything versus those that do. And here's the thing, there's a lot of assessments happening out there. First of all, a lot of companies not doing any kind of assessment. But then those that are doing assessments, a lot of them really are just scanning their ports, or they hire a company to just scan the perimeter and see if there's holes in their firewall. And that's not that meaningful. What a business owner really needs to understand is, what is my exposure? And I like to relate this to the healthcare field, right? I'm in my 50s, right? So I'm going to go to my doctor periodically and have some blood work done. And what I'm looking for is, what's my exposure to stuff like cancer or a heart attack? And I'm looking for those signs that tend to come on early. A lot of times you can see symptoms, right? artery clogging, building up and things like that, at which point the doctor's going to say, hey, you ought to change your diet, need some exercise, you ought to get rid of this and start that, or you got too much stress in your life or something. And that's really what the assessment should be all about. I should be able to go to a business person and say, hey, here's your critical processes, here's the data that really matters to your company, and here's the likelihood that you're going to run into a problem based on these things. And if you just took care of these few things, which isn't that expensive to repair right at this point because you haven't been hacked into yet, then it would alleviate 90% of the problem, and you could feel a lot more safe than you do right now. But if you just blind do it, no assessment, no measure of risk, then nobody really knows what to do. All they can do is listen to all the sales messages that are hitting them every day on TV and magazines, on the internet, on Facebook, and they don't know what to buy. And everybody wants them to spend thousands of dollars on this widget, on that widget, on this appliance, on this cloud app, and they don't know. They're just like locked up, so they do nothing. And they just need that measure of risk to say, do this, cut this out of your life, or start doing this, and you'll reduce that risk, and you'll be a lot safer. Just keep checking that, right? Do it. I like quarterly personally, and once you get in the habit of doing that quarterly, it's not that big a deal because you're just updating, kind of like you are with the doctor. You don't need the full exam every time. You're just checking the things that seem to be high risk.
Yep, you're trying to eliminate that huge heart attack. Well, from happening. So hey, I appreciate your time. I know that we're moving in here to about 45 minutes, and I appreciate all of your expertise and how this could really help our clients. Is there anything that our clients should be looking at, just to sum up with what we've talked about today? If you were to tell people, here's 3 things that you should do, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that your company does do assessments, which I really appreciate. And so one of the things I would be saying is they ought to be inviting you in to do that. They should be wanting that from you, and not disregarding it or thinking it's an extra or we don't really have time for that. It's something they ought to want from you. So that'd be number 1. Number 2, I think it's really paramount that they encourage to build training and a culture in their organization of people who want security. They want to know about security. They want to know how to handle data. That means there's training going on and things like that. And then third, based on the assessment, I really encourage people today. It's just not that expensive to move into some of the detection technologies that allow you to see some of the things that are going on. You cannot assume that we're okay because everything looks fine, but really putting in some controls that help people to monitor the different parts of their computing environment. That is the lifeblood of the business today. It's really all about the data. It's no longer about the computer or the network. It's about the data. Who has my data? Who has access to it? And it's a cultural mind shift really for everybody in the organization to start thinking about data as the money. Dollars and cents are a commodity really, but right. The data, that's what allows these companies to grow and prosper, and they need to start thinking about that. That's their focus.
Which I'm going to end on. That's the reason why people should read Digital Money. That's a great book. Well, Dave, thanks a lot for joining us today. This was informative, and I wish you luck at your current engagement there. Have a great day. Thanks again.